ITN World News next with TVS News at 10:15.
If you'd like your cooking to go in a more exciting direction, take a look at What's Cooking. Discover new ideas like fresh pasta and sauces for each shape, classic Chinese dish Peking duck, and how honey makes the skin crispy. Masterclass explores new ways with old favourites like lamb. It even takes you through planned menus. Can help you conquer anything. What's Cooking? A feast of ideas.
Do you wish you had the know-how to tackle imaginative cooking? Now Pruleith brings you Confident Cooking, a step-by-step guide that grows with your confidence.
You should try my Chinese stir-fry, new beef casserole, and my ice bowl.
Now you're cooking with confidence. Issue one with free binder at your newsagent now.
You've got the pattern, you've got the fabric, but have you got the know-how? Week by week, Successful Sewing will show you how to make clothes that really fit and really look good on you. Whether you want step-by-step instructions or free paper patterns, a whole library of basic sewing techniques, or new ideas for dressing your children and brightening your home, Successful Sewing will give you all the know-how you'll ever need. Part 1 of Successful Sewing is on sale now.
Watch out! Tomorrow at 9 on TVS, Gremlins.
Pan Am victims go home as it's confirmed it was a bomb. Anger, as Mr. Miller says some doctors' claims are fishermen's stories. The trade war turns nasty, America penalizes some European imports, and the operation these boys need but can't afford. Good evening. Exactly 1 week after the Pan Am jumbo jet crashed in Scotland, investigators say they have conclusive evidence that the plane was blown up by a bomb. They say they've found traces of a high-performance plastic explosive in the luggage hold. They don't know yet what sort of bomb was used or how it was placed.
The Air Accident Investigation Branch say there's no doubt Pan Am's jumbo jet Flight 103 was brought down by an explosive device. The trail of wreckage on the ground shows the bomb went off soon after the aircraft crossed the Scottish border at 31,000 feet. The statement from crash investigators came from a press conference arranged late this afternoon.
It has been established that two parts of the metal luggage pallets framework show conclusive evidence of a detonating high explosive. The explosive's residues recovered from the debris have been positively identified and are consistent with the use of a high-performance plastic explosive.
From what you've heard, you'll understand that this operation has developed into a criminal inquiry of international dimensions. Inquiries are ongoing throughout the world. These inquiries are wide-ranging and amongst others involve the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Anti-Terrorist Branch of the Metropolitan Police.
They are still removing major parts of the wreckage embedded throughout the town. Here, one of the jumbo's engines, logging where each part fell. And they are still clearing out the back gardens of the town, the houses shattered by the aircraft falling out of the sky. There's now some doubt over whether ordinary household insurance will cover damage due to a terrorist bomb, but there's no doubt about the anger of the American relatives here after hearing the news about the bomb tonight.
I would prefer that we took military action, and as they say in the movies these days, terminate with extreme prejudice.
The people of Lockerbie also felt anger.
Oh, I think it's dreadful, the whole thing.
There hasn't been a Christmas in Lockerbie, and nobody wants to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I was right underneath it when it went over, you know?
The crash teams left under police escort tonight to continue their investigations. David Chater, News at 10 in Lockerbie.
The clues to the cause of the crash didn't come from the most easily accessible pieces of wreckage, such as the tail and the aircraft's nose. Separated from the rest of the plane, the nose showed no signs of being blown off by a bomb or of breaking away because of structural failure. Only when smaller wreckage from the baggage holds was examined did it become clear there had been a bomb. Scientists found traces of explosive residue on some of the remains, but they've not yet identified which of the 2 luggage holds contained the bomb. Experts say an explosion in either hold could have destroyed the plane. But the most vulnerable area was in the nose, the hold close to the main electronics bay. An explosion next to the avionics would have caused the instant power failure which was shown on the flight recorders. The conclusion of the accident investigators has removed one worry from the world's airlines, concerned that their fleets of jumbo jets might be suffering from a previously unknown structural problem. Now the investigation will intensify into whether inadequate airport security at Frankfurt, where the flight began, or at Heathrow, failed to stop the terrorists, and whether it needs to be strengthened.
It's absolutely vital that it's established how this explosive got on board. More could always be done at civilian airports to improve security. It just depends on how much security civilian passengers are prepared to undergo, because security costs money, and it costs time, and it costs convenience.
To ensure the instant destruction of the airliner, the terrorists would have wanted their bomb in the forward cargo hold. To achieve that for certain, they'd have needed help on the ground. Police are investigating whether they could have had an accomplice amongst baggage handlers or catering staff.
As the first 5 bodies from Pan Am 103 arrived in New York today, attention was focused on who was responsible for the disaster. Republican leaders on Capitol Hill demanded a massive investigation and reprisals against any country found to have helped those who did it. At the State Department, officials said there could be a reward of $500,000 for anyone providing information leading to an arrest.
We are determined to get to the bottom of this and to find out who did it using all available U.S. resources.
But FBI Director William Sessions cautioned that catching the culprits, terrorists or criminals would not be easy.
I have to be optimistic, but it's a gigantic problem that all of us would understand.
3 groups have claimed responsibility. The only one named so far is the pro-Iranian Guardians of the Islamic Revolution. The State Department say the bomb warning they received in Helsinki was a hoax, although some victims' families are suing the U.S. government and Pan Am. But legal experts say proving willful negligence may be impossible. President-elect George Bush returns from his Christmas holidays tomorrow. He'll face pressing and difficult questions about what action he'll take if the Pan Am bombers are identified. Tim Hewitt, News at 10, Washington.
Here, junior doctors campaigning for shorter hours have angrily rejected a suggestion by the Health Minister, Mr. David Miller, that they've been exaggerating the problem. Doctors at the London hospital spoke of colleagues falling asleep during operations. Mr. Miller said that had the whiff of a fisherman's story about it. Tonight, Labour's shadow health minister, Miss Harriet Harman, warned Mr. Miller's refusal to listen will cost lives.
These junior doctors, coming towards the end of their Christmas protest about having to work in excess of 80 hours a week, were horrified to hear Health Minister David Miller accuse them in radio interviews this morning of exaggerating their claims. He said some examples the doctors were citing were fishermen's stories.
It's absolute rot, because it happened to myself, it happened to a lot of my colleagues. I was actually assisting an operation. I was holding the tractors back, and I was standing on a stool, because I'm not that tall, and I fell backwards. I fell asleep momentarily. Although I could have woke up and could have went back, they sent me out because obviously I was too tired to carry on. I've been working the last 3 days.
Last year in Birmingham there was a doctor who killed a baby with an overdose of a drug. And over the past 4 weeks, we've had so many stories from doctors about mistakes. One doctor who fell asleep during an operation woke up to find himself lying on top of a patient.
Mr. Miller agrees that many junior doctors are working too many hours, but not all of them, as his latest protest suggested. He said that government and health authorities were working together to ensure that as quickly as possible, excessive duties where patients could be put at risk were phased out.
We too think they have to work too long. We too have asked health authorities to try to make arrangements so that junior doctors don't have to work such long hours. We say, for instance, they shouldn't have to work more than one night in 3 or one weekend in 3. Bearing in mind, when we talk about work, we're talking not just about hours that they are actually working, but hours that they are on call.
The protest ended with the young doctors satisfied their efforts had brought the problem more into the public eye. Mr. Mellor said the solution everybody wanted must and could be found by the health authorities. They, in turn, say the government must let them have more doctors. Jeremy Hands, News at 10, East London.
The European community is on the verge of a trade war with the United States, which could cost hundreds of millions of pounds. From Sunday, the common market will ban imports of all American meat produced with growth hormones because of an alleged health risk. The United States denies the meat is dangerous and says it will retaliate by imposing sanctions on a wide range of European foods.
The Americans give their livestock 5 types of hormone to increase the animal's bulk, to beef up the beef. European consumer groups have opposed the additives because of health scares linking excess hormones to cancer. But some scientific evidence supports the US producers' claim that there's no danger.
Our food is safe. There's no question about that. The World Health Organization the Codex Alimentarius has stated that this ban has no scientific basis whatsoever.
We are imposing that ban since the consumers in Europe are asking for that. Since a number of years, there has been pressure in the community from the consumers, also from the European Parliament, asking the authorities to guarantee that the meat which they get offered is free of hormones.
In retaliation, the Americans are slapping a 100% import tax on a range of EEC products. Italian and German goods will be hit hardest, with British foods hardly affected. Officially, the United States is trying to play down the affair.
Please let me say, it's not a trade war. It is a dispute. But we will do $166 billion worth of business in two-way trade, goods and services, between the United States and the community. And that's a very large amount. What we're talking about here is a relatively very small amount of meat.
But there are fears of a growing tit-for-tat trade war. The common market's already said it'll counter-retaliate, and the following step might be a US ban on all EEC meat, and that's £200 million worth of business.
Parents of children born with a rare ear disorder are appealing for help from the health service. 1 in 10,000 children has Treacher-Collins syndrome. An operation costing £2,000 is available, but not on the NHS.
Luke and Simon Moore, perfectly ordinary, lively little boys, apart from the disorder which caused them to be born with malformed facial bones, no ears, and therefore deafness. Though with the inner ear still intact, they can hear something through bone conduction hearing aids attached to headbands. And like brothers everywhere, they argue. Their parents had a support group for other sufferers and are leading the campaign to get the NHS to pay for the operations which would massively improve their children's lives.
It's such an important operation for our children. It's, you know, they're going to look like normal children.
What hope have you of winning this campaign?
We're very hopeful because it's going to mean the difference between a life of misery or normality for the boys.
The National Deaf Children's Society paid for Keith Gilbert's operation. After years of headbands and embarrassingly unstable stick-on ears, he now sports lifelike silicone ears, and his hearing aid has been permanently implanted into the inner ear bone.
Well, they look like the real thing. They feel like it, apart from it's a bit hard. They stay on.
Keith's mother, Penny, suffers from the disorder too. She's now saving up to have the operation herself. Vernon Mann, News at 10, Berkshire.
Soccer, one result, Barclays League, Division 4, Lincoln 3, Doncaster 1. Finally, a racehorse belonging to Prince Charles has failed a dope test. Devil's Elbow was tested after winning a race at Worcester 3 weeks ago. 3 banned substances were found, and feedstuffs from the trainer Nick Gaisley's stables are being analysed. That's it from us. Good night.
But next we go to the studios of ITN in London for the news after the break.
Around mid-morning, Dr. Hunger's on the prowl.
Gosh, I'm hungry. Oh, bother.
It's obviously time for Macintosh's Prize.
Got your Professor Prize.
Here, lady, try a prize. Prize has protein-packed peanuts, juicy raisins, delicious fudge, and thick milk chocolate. It's unbeatable.
I hate your Professor Prize.
Macintosh's Prize. Hunger hates it.
There used to be a fish and chip shop down our road. Not anymore. They've redeveloped it into a multi-story car park. But Birdseye have come up with these. cod in batter, steaks, fingers, little chunks they call crispy cod fries, even fish and chips in the same packet. Nice. But they'd taste even better if they sold them in newspaper.
What the boo? Morning, Father. Brother Angelo wants you to try his pizza.
Pizza? He's supposed to be making crisps.
He is. Pizza-flavoured crisps.
Oh, how delicious.
Delight, as crispy as crisps we've ever created.
Multi-berry, Brother Angelo. Oh, I can see it now. KP Pizza Flavor Crisps.
Well done, brother.
Brother Joseph, what is a pizza? New KP Pizza Flavor Crisps. Truly a crisp amongst crisps.
Tonight on ITV, Agatha Christie's classic Murder with Mirrors.
Kill him, he's crazy. Oh my God.
You really suspect him?
I suspect everybody.
I don't believe any of us actually thought we'd be needing an alibi.
Yes, I'm sorry if all this offends you, but there is obviously a killer running around.
Deaths that defy investigation. Miss Marple confronts Murder with Mirrors. Tonight at 11:45 on ITV.
The news from ITN.
Police find Anna's body in the River Severn. Formal identification within the hour. Demonstrators tell Irish government don't extradite former priest. London estate agents firebombed, anti-terrorist squad investigates. And the party for John McCarthy on his 3rd birthday as a hostage. Good evening. In the next hour, detectives will formally identify the body found in the River Severn this afternoon as that of missing schoolgirl Anna Humphreys. It brings an end to the 3-week search for Anna, who disappeared on her way home from school on the Welsh-Shropshire borders. David Evans, the farm worker wanted on suspicion of murder, is still being held in France. The body was discovered in the river at Hampton Lode in Shropshire. Frogman also found the body of a middle-aged woman at Starport, but said there were no suspicious circumstances in that case.
Police sealed off this area of the River Severn once the body had been found. It was discovered by frogmen feeling their way through the murky waters very close to the site where the fresh search began. The body was caught under this tree, a spot which frogmen had already identified as one of several which warranted a thorough search. This afternoon that search began. The police were evidently certain that despite the fast-flowing current, the body hadn't been carried far beyond the point where it's thought it was thrown into the river.
It's about lunchtime today. The body of a female was recovered from the River Severn at Hampton Lode. The body is being taken to the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital for post-mortem examination. The body is as yet unidentified.
15-year-old Anna was abducted from her home in the village of Penley in North Wales nearly 3 weeks ago. Since then, hundreds of civilians and police have combed vast areas of countryside around her home. But when the search moved to the Severn, it was clear the police knew exactly where to look. The body recovered here this afternoon was taken away for formal identification. Anna's parents are thought to have left their home in North Wales to go to the hospital this evening. The body is here at Shrewsbury, and confirmation that it is that of the missing 15-year-old is expected within the hour. Mark Webster, ITN, Shrewsbury.
November the 8th, police begin a huge search when Anna fails to return home from school. She was regularly met by her parents and driven home, but on that afternoon they were caught up in a traffic jam. That night, David Evans disappears. 3 days later, on November the 11th, police name David Evans as the man they most want to interview. His green Allegro car, spotted nearby, is now in police custody. On November the 13th, the black shoe, the first of Anna's possessions, is found. As local people join in the search, it's revealed that Evans left with his passport, money and clothes. November the 15th, school friends stage a reconstruction of Anna's last movements. Red-haired Suzanne McBride, who looks very like Anna, retraces her steps. It's learnt that Evans is in France. Interpol is alerted. On November the 21st, Evans is arrested near the Swiss border almost 2 weeks after Anna's disappearance. Welsh detectives arranged to fly out and question him. Yesterday, the 26th of November, Frogmen begins searching part of the River Severn. Today, that search ended.
The government has announced plans to bring in tough new measures to prevent soccer hooligans travelling abroad for English internationals and club matches. The government wants to avoid violence by English fans like that seen at the European Championships in West Germany this summer. One measure under consideration would require convicted hooligans to report daily to police stations while English teams are abroad.
I've always said that it is as important to look at the national membership scheme for what happens inside the grounds in this country as it is to stop convicted football hooligans from travelling abroad as part of a package of measures. The government is going to be coming forward with proposals on that specific point within the next 2 weeks.
Supporters of the suspected terrorist Patrick Ryan have been staging demonstrations. They've called on the Irish government to reject a British bid for his extradition. The Irish Attorney General is considering the request tonight. Ryan, a former priest, was freed by the Belgians on Friday. He's now in Dublin. British detectives want to question him in connection with up to 180 terrorist charges over 13 years. They're believed to include the Hyde Park bombing in 1982 and the 1984 Brighton bombing.
Anti-extradition campaigners know there's one man who can prevent Father Ryan being sent to Britain, the Republic's Attorney General, John Murray. They demonstrated outside his home this afternoon, reminding him that opinion polls show a significant majority of Irish people are against extradition. It's Mr. Murray who'll decide whether Scotland Yard's evidence against Ryan is good enough. Sources here say that if the evidence is thin, he could dismiss Britain's request out of hand. Opinions differ on whether he'd be right to do that.
It appears to me that the warrant which seeks to extradite him to the British jurisdiction won't succeed, and I base that on my understanding of what the warrant contains.
If the British authorities can satisfy the Irish Attorney General that there is a sufficiency of evidence and that charges for a specific offence will be brought against Father Ryan, I believe that he should be extradited.
Ryan's solicitor says there's only one question the Attorney General has to answer.
Do you honestly believe that Father Patrick Ryan will get a fair trial if he's extradited to England? And that's basically the only question at issue.
Father Ryan is still a free man in his Dublin clinic. It's expected to be some days yet before he gets a decision from the Attorney General on his fate. James Mates, ITN, Dublin.
Cases like that of Patrick McVeigh, who went free when extradition broke down, have made many British politicians deeply suspicious of Irish intentions. The Ryan case has already inflamed those suspicions.
I'm afraid experience over the last few years of this particular government in the Irish Republic has led me to believe that they'll do anything they can to avoid having to send anyone back to Britain on a charge of terrorism.
The Irish reply that, as the case of Robert Russell shows, they will act when the evidence is there. But some in Ireland feel that terrorist suspects don't get a fair trial in Britain and should not be released. The Belgian decision to release Ryan is something the Irish government could have done without.
They have dumped on the government here a major security headache and a major headache in terms of public morale and a major chance for the IRA's touts to raise the usual whinge and whine about humanitarian values and thus distract attention away from their own inhumanity.
A way out may be provided by the Criminal Law Jurisdiction Act, drafted after the old Sunningdale Agreement, under which people can be tried in Ireland for offences committed in Britain. Labour's Kevin McNamara is tonight calling for that act to be used, and it's reported that legal and political advisers in Dublin think it could happen. Ministers at the Northern Ireland office aren't too worried whether Patrick Ryan is tried here or in Dublin, as long as a case is brought. So if the Irish government does decide to go ahead itself, the two governments will avoid confrontation and in the process save the Anglo-Irish agreement from further damage. Peter Allen, ITN, Central London.
The Labour leader Neil Kinnock has stepped up the opposition attack on the Chancellor following Friday's record trade deficit and 1% interest rate rise. He called Mr Lawson incompetent, irresponsible and arrogant. The former Trade Secretary John Biffin says Mr Lawson's tax-cutting budget was a major miscalculation which has left him politically exposed.
What's enraged the opposition is that despite rising inflation and the ever-worsening trade figures, Mr Lawson refuses even to consider a change of economic strategy. He made that clear again yesterday.
Nothing has led you to believe that you've got anything
We've
wrong.
got problems and we're addressing those problems.
and we will be successful.
But in Neil Kinnock's view, Mr. Lawson is now adding pig-headedness over using only interest rates to his earlier sins of destroying manufacturing industry and letting consumer spending rip.
No, certainly not.
The whole sorry tale is a collective responsibility of the government. No one is more responsible than the complacent and arrogant Chancellor himself.
From the Tory backbenches, John Biffin, a maverick maybe, but still a man with a keen political nose, has warned Mr. Lawson that sticking simply with high interest rates carries a high risk.
Oh, like I say, I understand he must pursue this course. He's got very little option, but he is in a very exposed position politically.
The SDP leader, David Owen, suggested today that Mr. Lawson may already be out on a political limb. It was noticeable, he said, that Cabinet colleagues weren't rushing to the Chancellor's defence. And a new CBI report showing 20% of its members reporting higher than usual export orders, but 24% with export orders below normal could further increase the pressure on Mr. Lawson. So the CBI says that it's the current high interest rates which are making exports less competitive, thereby further increasing the trade gap. Michael Brunson, ITN, Westminster.
The anti-terrorist squad is investigating a series of firebomb attacks on estate agents' offices in central London. The overnight attacks all happened within an hour of each other, and police described the incendiary devices as quite sophisticated.
Worst hit was the Mayfair office of Stratton Parker, which specialised in country properties. The fire was started by an incendiary device put through the letterbox. No warning was given. Similar devices were left at 4 other estate agents in central London, causing only minor damage. No group have yet said they did it. Earlier this year, a Welsh extremist group claimed they carried out the firebomb attacks on 4 Chester estate agents in protest against the sale of Welsh holiday homes. It was part of a campaign of arson attacks on property firms along the Welsh border. In the early 80s, a number of holiday homes were burnt down in North and Mid Wales. But police won't say if they're linking today's attacks to Welsh groups. Stratton Parker do have offices on the Welsh borders and advertise properties in North Wales, but say they've had no trouble before. The fire service have so far found no evidence of Welsh extremist involvement.
Absolutely no evidence to support that at all, and it really is a matter for the police to look into that aspect of the fires and possibly come up with a conclusion on that.
Meanwhile, explosives experts from Scotland Yard's anti-terrorist squad are dismantling the devices to see if they're similar to ones used in the attacks along the Welsh borders. Malcolm Munro, ITN, Central London.
Arab states have condemned the American decision to ban the PLO chairman Yasser Arafat from entering the country. He was denied a visa on the grounds that he condoned and supported terrorism. Mr. Arafat, who was meeting Jordan's King Hussein today, had planned to speak in a Middle East debate at the United Nations in New York. Jordan and Egypt are calling for the debate to be held in Geneva. John McCarthy, one of the 3 British hostages held in Lebanon, is 32 today. Tonight, friends and colleagues are hosting a special birthday party in his honour. He was kidnapped in April 1986 and has been held for 955 days. It's his 3rd birthday in captivity. The 2 other British hostages are Terry Waite, held for 670 days, and Belfast teacher Brian Keenan, who was kidnapped 961 days ago.
Tonight, thousands of John McCarthy supporters from all over the country have gathered at the Hippodrome in London's Leicester Square for his birthday party. It's a benefit to celebrate his 32nd birthday, his 3rd in captivity. The event has been organised by John's girlfriend, Jill Morell, who hopes that although John can't be with them, he'll hear about it.
It is a bit strange to hold something like this without John being here, but it's his 3rd birthday in captivity, and the strangeness is something we've got used to over the past 2.5 years. But it's something that John would like to be at, it's something that he would enjoy, and I think he'd want his friends to be marking his birthday in a positive kind of way, and I just hope he feels the kind of spirit of the evening in some way.
John McCarthy was last seen 2.5 years ago at his farewell party in Beirut. John's parents have taken part in a video that they hope will be shown on Beirut television.
On your birthday, this is a very special feeling we have, and we hope that you do pick up the prayers from all your friends and the family that are going out to you.
The party will go on into the early hours, raising money for the Friends of John McCarthy campaign, who say they'll continue until they hear some news.
In the UK Snooker Championship at Preston, Doug Mountjoy is on the verge of a dramatic victory over Stephen Hendry. He won 7 frames in a row and is now 15-10 up, just 1 frame short of victory. He also managed to score 3 centuries in 3 successive frames, equalling the world record. And that's all from ITN for the moment. Have a very good evening.
Now the weather forecast for the Tyne Tees region. Rain will spread over the region tonight, with hill fog developing later on. Tomorrow morning will be cloudy with further rain at times, but it will turn brighter and drier in the afternoon. Milder than of late, with the temperature reaching 11 degrees Celsius, 52 Fahrenheit, with a moderate to fresh south to southwesterly wind. And that's the weather forecast.
Once upon a time, there was an old man who lived with his 2 sons.
I'm off to a residential course for double-entry bookkeeping. Take this money and see what you can earn with it whilst I'm away.
Some time later, he returned.
Yes, Walter?
Papa, I buried my money in a building society where it sat, accumulating interest.
Well done, as I've always said, better safe than sorry.
Oh.
And William, for once, let's hope you've shown some of your brother's good sense.
Dad, I put my money in Lloyd's Bank high-interest check account and used their new unit trust scheme to invest in Britain and the rest of the world.
Unit trusts from a bank? I suppose they'll be selling shares next.
Oh, well, actually, they already do. Lloyd's Bank new share deal scheme. So far, I've done rather well out of it.
William! Oh, just as I've always maintained. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Well, bring on the black horse.
Lloyd's Bank, a thoroughbred amongst banks.
Come to marvelous Mexico, or don't move an inch and have an exotic break with Bachelor's new Mexican spicy tomato capa soup. Arriba, arriba!
No matter what you fry, all you gotta do is shake it, and off comes the crisp and dry. All you gotta do is shake it, and there goes the crisp and dry. It's a lighter way to fry.
Fry Crisp and Dry is specially made to shake off food more easily. So when the food's on the plate, the oil's still in the pan.
All it takes is a couple of shakes.
Now there's new Crisp and Dry oil you can cut.
A lighter way to fry.
Sunday, 2:30, Middlesbrough, the club that came back from the brink of financial ruin, take on Aston Villa at Ayresome Park. The home side have set their sights on Division 1, so there's all to play for. See it live and exclusive Sunday, 2:30.
You're watching LWT.
The news from ITN.
The world's biggest heroin haul, £2 billion worth seized in Bangkok. A Soviet first, cameras allowed into an SS-20 missile base. Mrs. Thatcher accused of caving in to the European farm lobby. And shock in the First Division, Liverpool give away a goal. Good evening. Customs officials in Thailand have seized 1.5 tons of high-grade heroin, the world's biggest haul of the drug. It was uncovered at the docks in Bangkok on a ship bound for New York. Tonight, American drug officers put its street value at around £2 billion. They were relieved and delighted with the find. Simon Cole at ITN reports.
Bangkok has seen huge heroin hauls before, but nothing like this. Small boys helped customs unload it, 1.5 tons packed among a ship's cargo of rubber sheets, which prevented police dogs sniffing it out. A tip-off had sent customs to the docks in Thailand's capital, and the heroin was found on a freighter bound for New York. It's likely American drug enforcement officers played a major role in the discovery. They've been concerned for some time about the so-called Golden Triangle, a drug-producing region on the borders of Thailand, Laos and Burma. It's here where fields of poppies are harvested to produce opium and further refined to make heroin. Some is destroyed by the Thai authorities, but much more is funneled down to Bangkok. A major homegrown drug problem is a byproduct of a lucrative export market. The potential market this time, as so often before, was America. And if it had left Thailand, would have killed, in the customs man's words, an uncountable number of people. That's why the American Drug Enforcement Agency is delighted tonight, despite the lack of arrests. Police in Bangkok and New York are trying to track down the smugglers who would have made a fortune from the highly refined heroin.
The Soviet Union gave the world an unprecedented look tonight at the inside of a top-secret military base for SS-20 nuclear missiles. Those are the medium-range weapons due to be abolished after the Washington summit, along with their cruise and Pershing equivalents in the West. Soviet television took Eastern Bloc journalists to the base. Its location was not given.
There's no snow and the soldiers wear no greatcoats. The missile base the Soviets showed on television tonight was far to the south of Moscow. These are extraordinary pictures, revealing an SS-20 missile and launcher in the field. Such sites were once top secret. The Russian reporter says he's at an unknown point. It's the first time these weapons have been shown in situ rather than in the open. Tonight, Soviet viewers heard this is a typical exercise. The soldiers are always on full alert, never knowing if the order to scramble is the real thing. And the report claims this was the first time the soldiers had ever seen the launcher in daylight. Night exercises were the norm. The point was to mark 2 months since the INF deal was signed at the Washington summit. It will scrap this entire class of missiles. On hand to see evidence of the new political thinking that's made this possible, foreign correspondents and their cameras. But there are limits to glasnost. The cameras are only from the socialist countries of Eastern Europe that stand in the front line of arms control deals with the West. Ian Glover-James, ITN, Moscow.
The Russians today blame the Americans for the Black Sea collision between 2 US warships and 2 Soviet ones. Mr. Gennady Gerasimov of the Soviet Foreign Ministry said the Americans maneuvered dangerously. Washington says the Russians rammed them. Here, the Health Secretary, Mr. John Moore, has said he wants to keep people free from having to worry about medical bills, even if there are changes in NHS funding. But he told the Young Conservatives Conference in Eastbourne he was keeping all options open.
Nurses in uniform were out lobbying Young Conservatives, and in particular Secretary of State John Moore, their plea to save the National Health Service. But inside, Mr. Moore implied strongly the 40 years of free provision for all were near an end.
I will not be afraid, the government will not, to consider all options in this area. We mustn't be trapped in dogma, nor must we be trapped in the past. Our aim must be absolutely clear. I want to keep that vision, the vision of a health service for all, free from fear of money needed at the time of health need.
That pleased the young radical right, but the biggest welcome was for the Education Secretary's appeal to family values.
Parents must accept that they are the first educators, and without fulfilling that responsibility, the formal education system is just going to be another state agency for coping with social casualties.
The young Tories united in their ovation, but tonight the open battle among themselves for control of the youth movement broke out. Supporters of the current moderate leadership picketed right-wingers and alleged far-right freedom groups had put up the money for an unprecedented election meeting. It was a free bash in support of the right-wing candidates bidding tomorrow to take control of the organisation. But that's a prospect viewed with much concern by Conservative Party officials. Kevin Dunn, ITN, Eastbourne.
Leaders of Britain's biggest nurses' union, the Royal College of Nursing, have confirmed they'll hold an immediate ballot to decide whether to retain their no-strike policy. A 2/3 majority is needed to change the rules. The results expected in about a month. The ferrymen whose dispute sparked the national seamen strike could return to work tomorrow. The Isle of Man Steam Packet Company and the National Union of Seamen signed a provisional agreement tonight. It means the number of planned redundancies will be reduced from 80 to 47. Union leaders will recommend the deal to members at mass meetings tomorrow. Labour and some Conservative critics of the new common market budget reform say Mrs Thatcher has given in to the European farming lobby. The Shadow Foreign Secretary, Mr Gerald Kaufman, says the Prime Minister left Brussels with bent knee. Mrs Thatcher did make concessions on overproduction, but she says she achieved the main objectives.
It took 14 hours of often furious argument, and when the deal came at 1 a.m, it represented tighter spending controls than ever before, but not as tight as Mrs Thatcher in the top-floor summit suite had been holding out for. She herself was not overjoyed, warned the assembled press not to be over-cheerful either. She was particularly angry with the French for insisting that the deal can only stand if foreign ministers now meet to re-examine controls on a whole range of lesser products.
I can't tell you. Only a Frenchman could have done that. It's absolute, unbelievable.
Mrs Thatcher thought it absurd that the French should hold up this deal on massive crops like cereals with what she saw as quibbles about controls or stabilisers on unimportant things like tobacco and sugar.
It's absolutely crazy that we're fit in this council to discuss 3 main stabilisers, but totally unfit to decide 7 to 8 minor ones. It's a Gilbertian situation, but there you are. I never did understand men. No.
Once tempers have cooled, the result of the deal will be to cut the share of the EEC budget going to Europe's 10 million farmers from 68% last year to 62% this year. And finally in 1992, when this new plan runs out, down to 56%. As the farmers' cash goes down, the plan is to boost resources to poorer areas from just 14% of the budget last year to 17.5% this year. And then by 1992, up to over 24.5%. That's £9,000 million for subsidies to industry, inner cities, roads and telecommunications. So complicated are these new farm regulations that it was left to the Foreign Secretary to sum it up thus.
It is the detail that makes it difficult for you to explain that makes it effective.
Getting any sort of agreement at all has clearly taken its toll in the British camp. It was not until 3 a.m. that Mrs Thatcher had finally divested herself both of the detail and of her less charitable thoughts on the French and set course for Downing Street. John Snow, ITN, Brussels.
Here, 1,500 volunteers have joined a huge search for the missing computer operator Helen McCourt. Merseyside police say they believe she's already dead.
Hundreds of volunteers, including the missing girl's brother, swamped the village of Billinge near Wigan in today's search for Helen's body. Groups of searchers, each led by a police officer, were briefed about her appearance.
She's described as being 5 foot tall, medium build, fresh complexion, blue-green eyes, dark hair.
The search concentrated on streams, copses and woodlands for miles around the village, an area which has already been searched from the air without producing any clues. Helen was last seen getting off this bus around 5:15 on Tuesday evening. Police believe she may have accepted a lift from someone she knew because of the bad weather. As frogmen searched for Helen's body, police said they're still interviewing a 31-year-old man in connection with her disappearance. No charges will be brought today. Mark Webster, ITN, Lancashire.
And now, with all the news of today's sporting action, here's our sports correspondent, Giles Smith.
Liverpool's drive to the Championship goes on remorselessly. Their latest victims today, Watford. Their recent revival and awful conditions at Vicarage Road didn't daunt the champions-elect as they won 4-1.
If no one can beat Liverpool, what price the next team to score first against them? Watford came close today. Ablett and Hansen tied up in the mud. Trevor Senior's chip almost good enough. Then from the corner, another out-of-character scramble in the box. McClellan finally slicing wide. All that was in the first 10 minutes. Then Liverpool stopped playing around and Watford began sinking. Beardsley's first came out of nowhere. A routine run round the box with a marker who wasn't close enough. 1-0 at half-time and Watford's full house was expecting a miracle. But 5 minutes into the second half, it was all over. Houghton's cross exposing more slack marking with Aldridge closing in. Then the goal of the game from Beardsley again. It was another simple solo effort which only a great player can create. But the fourth really was simple, a Barnes tap-in as Watford's defence again failed to mark the right man. Then tragedy for the Anfield outfit, a 10-match spell without even conceding a goal, ruined by a moment's hesitation. Blissett got the consolation, but Grobbelaar won't get the sack. Peter Staunton, ITN Sport, Vicarage Road.
Steve Bruce's first goal for United helped them stay in second place. Chelsea's dismal run goes on. They haven't won now for 14 games. Nigel Clough got the equaliser for Forest, but for Clough Senior it seems like goodbye to the title as well as that job for Wales. An own goal from Paul Parker eased Everton's return to league action after their cup tie marathons. Paul Poynton got the other. And in Scotland, Frank McAvenny's late goal keeps Celtic 3 points ahead of Rangers, who beat St Mirren 4-0. Cricket and fine bowling by Graham Dilley has put England into a strong position on the second day of the first test at Christchurch. England were all out for 319. New Zealand, without the injured Richard Hadley, are 83 for 4. Dilley took all 4 wickets.
Medical advice meant Hadley's place in cricket history was again delayed, frustrating for supporters and the player himself, still nursing a strained calf muscle. In poor light and Hadley's absence, England's batsmen volunteered to start, but quickly wished they hadn't. Ewan Chatfield struck with his first ball, Capel out for 11, and after Athy fell to another great catch from Greatbatch, Chatfield picked up another 3 wickets as England's last 6 batsmen fell for just 84 runs. If it brought a smile back to Hadley's face, it was only temporary. Graham Dilley strode in to produce his finest burst of test match bowling. John Wright was the first victim, and Trevor Franklin soon followed. Andrew Jones is New Zealand's new star. Dilley saw him off too. And then the big wicket. Martin Crowe went for only 5. New Zealand were 40 for 4 and in big trouble. John Bracewell and Jeff Crowe are trying to redeem matters, but in Christchurch, it's the Poms doing the pounding. Mark Austin, ITN Sport, Christchurch.
In rugby union, it was the 4th round of the John Player Cup. The holders Bath beat Leicester 13-6. Last year's finalists Wasps beat Gloucester 24-13, while Bristol overwhelmed Richmond 34-0. The best of Bristol's 6 tries came late in the second half from a line-out. Hogg and Nibs set up Hugh Duggan for a scissors background his forwards. He handed on to Carr, and when he was stopped a few yards short of the Bristol forwards, were quickly on hand to set up the try for Harding. Racing and the instant on the right could prove expensive for champion jockey Peter Scudamore. It happened at Newbury yesterday. Jockey Bruce Dowling tried to pass Scudamore on the inside, but the champion wasn't having it, and the pair became caught up in a private feud. Then at the next jump, Dowling's mount fell. Both face a hearing at the Jockey Club. A long suspension could mean the champion missing that Cheltenham Festival next month. And just for the record, the rugby minnows from Berry Hill went out to Harlequins by 17 points to 4 in their John Player Cup tie. But given the conditions, I wonder if anyone could tell.
And just as we thought of making a clean getaway. That's it tonight from the ITN Weekend News team. Good night.
Good evening. A look at the weather now. Well, after all the rain we've been having lately, it looks as if we're going to have a few days of much drier weather at last. Tomorrow's certainly going to be better than today. But for the rest of tonight, there will be some more rain. Some of it will be quite heavy. Temperatures are extremely mild, though, more like what we'd expect at the end of April. 7 Celsius is 45 Fahrenheit. Winds are from the south-southwest and falling to just a light 10 miles per hour. Well, Kent and Sussex are going to get the best weather out of the LWT region tomorrow. It'll be a mainly dry day with just 1 or 2 spots of rain first thing. But the main area of rain is moving north, and although it'll leave a lot of cloud behind, there won't be as much as today. And it should thin out a little in the afternoon, especially in those southeastern areas. Temperatures will reach 10 Celsius, 50 Fahrenheit, and the winds from the south will only blow at 15 miles per hour. Well, that's all from us for tonight, but we'll be back at 1 o'clock with the news tomorrow. Good night.
The importance of being English is quality, style and flair. Humphrey Lloyd is the English shirt that gets you everywhere.
Humphrey Lloyd shirts, made in England at good men's shops now. Bring out the unique, tangy, fruity flavour of Branston pickle much more often.
Here, where you been getting the money to buy all them new clothes, eh?
Don't be silly, I got them all at Tesco. The sweater was $1.99 and the skirt.
Oh, yeah? I don't believe it.
Yeah. Do you want to buy a quartz digital watch? 30 quid.
No, thanks. I got one at Tesco for £17.50. And Green Shield stamps.
Don't believe it.
Tesco Home and Wear. You won't believe what we sell. You won't believe what we sell it for.
Hello. Like a lot of people today, I'm a busy Weight Watcher. I've been asked to try this new Weight Watcher cereal, Protein Wisp Flakes. They have a toasted wheat taste, and they even stay crisp in milk. Protein Wisp Flakes are high in protein to help you through your busy mornings. And if they're part of a calorie-controlled diet, they'll help watch your weight too. So why don't you join me for breakfast?
New Protein Wisp Flakes for busy Weight Watchers.
Sunday night at 7:15 on ITV, the British television premiere of The Four Feathers, a classic story of adventure and honor.
Satisfaction. Call them out, man! This is a scandal!
I deserve them.
And was it cowardice for you? For what? For resigning? This is an outrage. They must take them back. With me!
Don't miss The Four Feathers on Sunday night at 7:15. At 9:05, The Professionals.
Your firm is in the middle of a corruption case. Petty cash. New cars for councillors. It's pulled in CI5.
I can remember when this used to be a military club. He was military once. Oh, one of those rag and bone regiments.
That's Sunday night action on ITV.
From the newsroom of TVS, the late news for the South.
Good evening. A schoolboy scientist who received 6 life sentences after a bombing campaign has been found hanging in his prison cell at Portsmouth. 28-year-old Thomas Lascelles was discovered by officers at Kingston Prison today. He'd been jailed in 1978 after sending parcel bombs to supporters of legal abortion. Lascelles, who was 17 at the time, had made a sophisticated bomb triggered by a light-sensitive cell. He later sent a gift-wrapped bomb at Christmas to a charity for crippled children. The coroner has been informed. There's been a big drop in the number of drunk drivers on the South's roads this Christmas, according to figures released today. That's despite the fact that far more motorists were breathalyzed. Graham Simmons reports.
Police here in the South were promising a higher profile this year, and they've been true to their word. Officers in the Thames Valley tested more than 1,000 motorists, almost twice last year's figure, but they actually found fewer drivers had been drinking, a 7% reduction in positive tests. In Dorset and Wiltshire, the picture was similar. Overall, a 50% increase in the number of tests carried out, but a 3% drop in arrests.
Hampshire police haven't yet released their drink-drive figures. An elderly Hampshire couple may not be allowed to live in their dream retirement home because of a planning row with their local council. Bill Borman and his wife built a home behind the chemist shop they've run for 30 years at Whitchurch. Now they're being told they must sell their 3-year-old retirement home with the business.
I've got to sell the house and the pharmacy itself and my wife's retirement home. This I'm simply not prepared to do.
But former Master of the Rolls, Lord Denning, was born above the shop. He's now promised to help the couple in their fight. Hundreds of seabirds are being killed by an oil slick off the Sussex coast. Dozens have already been washed up on the shoreline. The RSPCA are mounting a big rescue operation at a sanctuary in Sussex. Many of the birds are being saved, but some are too polluted to survive.
The chances of this bird survival are not good indeed. In fact, we've got to make up our minds whether it's fair to put it through all that stress of cleaning, which can take up to an hour and a half in a case like this, particularly as the bird seems a little thin, and the chances are we will have to regrettably have to put this bird down.
6 birds a day are being cleaned using hot water and washing up liquid. A couple from Hampshire who are both completely deaf have just had their first baby, and Adam Miller can hear perfectly. Melanie Bradley reports.
Donna and Anthony Miller are just like any parents thrilled with their brand new son, except they will never hear their baby cry. That doesn't mean 1-month-old Adam has any trouble alerting his parents to his needs. Anthony and Donna have rigged up special alarms that flash a light every time he starts to yell, so they can share all the joys of parenthood, including the disturbed nights.
And now for a look at tomorrow's weather, here's Carl Tyler.
Good evening. Well, the winds are a lot lighter this evening. That's going to bring problems for the next few nights at least. Watch out, round dawn tomorrow, some patchy fog in the lower lying areas. Now, if we have a look at the chart for noon tomorrow, you can see high pressure, isobars well apart, so quite light winds, big bulge of warm air coming up from the Canaries. So tomorrow morning then, it's going to be a dull, grey, misty start to the morning, but it will brighten up as we go through the morning. For the afternoon, I think a fair amount of sunshine around, particularly inland. By then, your winds just a light southerly. Your best temperatures are very mild, 11 Celsius. So to summarise then, it's going to be dry, misty at first, brightening up with sunny spells by lunch.
And that's all from the TVS newsroom for the moment. Chris Peacock will be with you at 5 to 10 tomorrow morning.
The sale to go to is The Sale at Debenhams. Get there any way you can, but get there. The Sale at Debenhams.
Whatever you've forgotten or run out of this Christmas or New Year, batteries, biscuits, videos, Coke, ice cream, just about anything, don't forget 7-Eleven. We've got it all in one. So if you're missing something this holiday, don't go crazy. Go to 7-Eleven.
Here's wishing you an even whiter Christmas.
Hello, George. Hello, Mary. Picking up some bargains, are we?
Afraid not, Griffin.
We never seem to have enough money saved at the right time. Ah, we need to talk about a save and borrow account. Walk this way, madam. Sir?
Oh, I see. If we save a regular amount each month...
We can borrow up to 30 times that amount, any time we like.
Got it in one. And you earn good interest when you're saving, don't forget. Save and borrow certainly makes a difference at sales time, eh?
I'll say.
Ah, something wrong, Griffin?
No. Just a little bargain I couldn't resist. Open a Midlands Save and Borrow account at the Listening Bank.
There's great evening film action for Boxing Day on Thames. At 9, the British TV premiere of Who Dares Wins.
Everybody quiet! You are now hostages of the Revolution for Peace movement of the People's Lobby.
S-A-S.
Go ahead! What are we gonna do? Come on, answer it, damn it! Answer it!
Lewis Collins leads the SAS in the British TV premiere of Who Dares Wins. Boxing Day film action at 9 on Thames.
Police storm siege flat with stun grenades and guns. Rising floodwaters in the south, snow threatens the north. Tribal warfare brings bloodiest Christmas ever to South Africa. And wayward lad gallops into the record books. Good evening. The Christmas siege drama in Middlesex ended tonight in bloodshed and confusion as armed police from Scotland Yard's crack C11 squad stormed the flat with stun grenades. The 4-year-old girl, held at knife point for 28 hours, was rescued and taken to hospital with minor stab wounds. Her captor, Errol Walker, was hit by 2 police marksman's bullets, but not badly hurt. The decision to storm the flat in Northolt was tonight criticised by some neighbours who claimed the police had overreacted. The siege began on Christmas morning after the child's mother staggered from the flat with stab wounds, and she died later.
As the siege entered its second day, police were confident it would end peacefully. Walker was still talking as police showed they weren't armed. But he refused a woman friend's plea to give himself up. "You're surrounded," she said. And police were taking no chances. Armed men moved to position, and firemen had a safety net at the ready after further threats from Walker against his 4-year-old hostage. The stress of the siege showed when Walker brandished his knife at police, who were still hoping their waiting game would pay off. But the siege was to end as it began, with violence. Walker, crouching in his doorway, made a dash along the balcony for a police riot shield. As he raced back, police came out of their hiding places to pounce and missed him. Then seeming hesitation about what to do next. Despite renewed threats from Walker against his hostage, they stormed the flat with stun grenades. Three shots rang out in the confusion. Walker was hit twice. After 29 hours, the siege was over. Carleen was carried out suffering from 2 minor stab wounds. She's now recovering in hospital. Walker's limp form was dragged to another ambulance and taken away. He's not badly hurt. Police had to calm people on the estate. One woman tried to attack them with a knife as feelings ran high. Things became quieter when they were told Carleen was still alive. Some of them are saying the police missed opportunities to end the siege earlier, and when they did go in, there was no need to use guns. Simon Cole, ITN, Northolt.
Within the last half hour, the police have issued a statement strongly denying either hesitating or overreacting. They say they had to change their earlier policy of wait and see when Walker threatened to stab his young hostage.
Circumstances changed it for us. We didn't change it, circumstances changed it for us. And I think that we had no option. Once he'd come out, as I said to you earlier, that we'd considered this option, that we then had to go in the interests of saving the life of this young child.
You spoke of the prompt entry, but in fact it was nearly 30 seconds.
Well...
and there was a great deal of hesitation. What was that all about?
Well, I don't accept that totally. The whole period from beginning of the incident of him coming out to the police action within the premises was only 45 seconds. I think that you would agree with me that in all the circumstances, bearing in mind that they had to go through a closed door, that was remarkably quick.
A leading expert on police siege tactics tonight questioned whether the police should have taken an earlier opportunity to end the siege. Michael Yardley analysed the storming for ITN.
Well, it seems odd that this sort of eventuality had not been pre-planned, or indeed if it had been pre-planned, that they weren't able to put some sort of plan into action rather more rapidly than in fact they did. But nevertheless, they weren't able to. And it appears that once they'd failed to stop him going back into the flat, they had actually made an aggressive move towards him. Now we see Walker has been considering what he should do. Now he's moving out of his flat to make a grab for the shield. Now, unfortunately, the police come back. They try and cut him off, but they don't manage to. Now we can see he's at the door now, talking to them. And is it possible that he's threatening the little girl's life? Now the policeman appears, the R1 there, appears to be taking orders from someone else who's out of shot. And we see him break the window, and 5 seconds later, the stun grenade goes in. Now another officer comes with a sledgehammer to try and gain entrance to the building. Saw one of the grenades going off then. Now here is the main problem here. It seems to be taking them an awfully long time to get into that flat. About 10 seconds, in fact, before the first officer manages to gain entry.
And to put it bluntly, does it look like they knew what they were doing?
Well, I think it looks as if they could have done with a little bit more practice of this sort of specific operation. And I think one of the problems perhaps with police forces across Britain at the moment is that many officers are asked to do a job like this on a part-time basis, whereas, for example, soldiers in the Special Air Service, when they're not actually dealing with an incident, which thankfully is very rare, they're practicing for incidences which have not yet arisen.
It's been a Boxing Day of mopping up for thousands in southern England who've been hit by torrential rain and floods. Worst hit were Devon and Cornwall, where several villages were cut off and thousands of homes damaged. Many main roads there are still impassable, and rescue teams have been working round the clock to help those worst hit. An inch of rain has fallen in London alone in the past 24 hours, a third of the normal December rainfall. The Thames flood barrier will be closed tonight to guard against threatening high tides, only the second time it's been used since it opened 3 years ago. Police in Somerset and Avon are telling drivers to stay at home. In Buckinghamshire and the Thames Valley, several rivers burst their banks, and in Essex, sandbags were piled up on riverbanks to protect houses. The weathermen say the worst of the rain is over, but a new hazard is on the way, freezing temperatures and possibly even snow. Another of the 26 men jailed in last week's Belfast Supergrass trial has started a hunger strike in the Maze prison. He's Gerard Steenson, nicknamed Dr. Death, a member of the Irish Liberation Army who's serving 6 life sentences for murder. Robert Toohill, who's also serving life for murder, has been on hunger strike for the past week. The Defence Secretary Michael Heseltine has cancelled a family holiday to Nepal because of the crisis over Westland helicopters. It's understood he thinks it would be wrong to be out of the country while crucial decisions are taken about the future of the company. In Lebanon, Christian, Druze and Shiite Muslim leaders say they've agreed to a Syrian-sponsored peace pact. They say the deal will be signed within the next 5 days to end the civil war that split the country for 10 years. It's thought the agreement involves new elections in which Muslims would be guaranteed 50% of the seats. South Africa has had its bloodiest Christmas ever. 58 blacks have been killed in 3 days of violence, most of them in fierce clashes between Zulus and rival tribesmen near Durban.
At first light this morning, gangs of Zulu warriors were patrolling the townships of Mahatu after the Christmas Day killings that left more than 50 dead. It was the worst single day of violence since rioting began in South Africa 18 months ago. But these men were settling tribal, not political scores. It's unsure what sparked off the fighting, but Zulus and Pondos have been disputing land and cattle rights for years. But the scale of yesterday's violence, involving 5,000 men, was a throwback to the tribal wars a century ago, and their weapons had changed little. Out on the roads this morning, some of the hundreds of women fleeing the area, taking with them what few possessions they could. They'll stay out of the district until their men say it's safe to return. This morning, no sign of the security forces, but groups of Zulus were free to set up their own roadblocks as they continued the search for Pondo tribespeople. Peter Sharp, ITN in South Africa.
The Boxing Day sports programme was badly hit by the weather. Racing at Huntingdon was cancelled and 8 league football matches postponed. In the games that were played, Frank Stapleton gave league leaders Manchester United the lead at Everton, but then Graham Sharp got 2 as Everton came back for a 3-1 win. Manchester City's Clive Wilson did neighbours United a favour, getting the goal that beat Liverpool at Main Road. So with West Ham losing for the first time in 18 games and Chelsea's game postponed, United are still 4 points clear at the top. Now racing, and Borough Hill Lad was the odds-on favourite for today's big event, the King George VI Chase at Kempton. But by the final fence, he'd been left behind in a 2-horse race, leaving his great rival Wayward Lad to make racing history.
Wayward Lad and Coomsditch in the air together, touchdown together. Who shows a bit of turn of foot? Wayward Lad, what a grand old campaigner. Coomsditch looks like he's going to be second again, but he's fighting back. We're coming up toward the line. Wayward Lad and Coomsditch. Wayward Lad and Coomsditch. Wayward Lad wins it just.
So Wayward Lad at 12-1 became the first horse to win the King George for the 3rd time. Coomsditch was second at 3-1. Borough Hill Lad was 4th. The RSPCA has fired the first shots in a nationwide campaign to get fox hunting banned. It came on the day that thousands of hunt enthusiasts all over the country gathered for the traditional Boxing Day meetings.
The Boxing Day hunt, gathering here in Surrey with a seasonal toast, a tradition now coming under increasing attack from those who want blood sports banned. Here, demonstrators outnumbered huntsmen, and their message was blunt.
It's all dissuaded by this kind of reception.
No, not in the least. I'm doing something entirely legal.
That's why the RSPCA are adopting a different angle of attack. Their 15-year stand against fox hunting starts a new campaign today, aimed at lobbying public opinion and MPs to change the law.
I think you've got to bear in mind that these people are carrying out, whether we like it or not, a legal pursuit. We want to make it illegal. That's all we want to do, but certainly not by injuring or threatening anybody.
But the pro-hunt lobby say the RSPCA won't win this battle.
I think it's rather sad because the RSPCA does so much good work in the cause of animal welfare. I think by coming out against fox hunting very strongly, they'll be alienating a large proportion of the community that does hunt.
But scenes like this need not disappear. The RSPCA merely want the fox taken out of hunting, leaving the hounds chasing a scent. Ian Glover-James, ITN in Surrey.
And just tonight's main headline again, the Christmas siege drama in Middlesex ended tonight in bloodshed and confusion as armed police from Scotland Yard's crack C11 squad stormed the flat with stun grenades. And that's the news this Boxing Day. Good night.
Now the weather. Any remaining showers will soon die out and temperatures will fall close to freezing, giving some icy patches on roads by morning. Tomorrow will be mostly dry and cold with some sunshine. Maximum temperatures only 3 Celsius, 37 Fahrenheit. And it'll be less windy. That's the weather.